Hey everybody. In this lesson, I am going to be showing you how to create a gradient using CSS. What a gradient does is it allows you to transition from one color to another within an element. So if you take a look at this element here, it's just regular blue. What I could do is within this element using a gradient, I could start at blue and then transition into another color really seamlessly, really in a nice way. Uh, Gradients allow you to give a little bit of additional visual interest to your page, and in some cases you can use them to give the appearance of depth or style, for instance, this button so it doesn't look quite so flat. So first I'll start off by showing you how to apply a gradient, and then we'll talk about the various options that you can use, and then I'll show you some of the ways in which gradients might be useful to you. So first of all, I'm going to start off by creating a gradient in this background color here. So the way you do it is you'll notice that right now I have background color cornflower blue. If I want to make this a gradient that goes from cornflower blue to white, what I need to do is get rid of the background color and just do background. And then I'm going to say it is a linear gradient, and then I put some parentheses in there. And I make the gradient from the first color I want, so cornflower blue, and then a comma, and then the color that I want it to change into. In this case, I want it to be white, or how about snow, right? Then I put my semicolon on the end of it and save my changes. And now let's take a look at what I've got. See, I start off with blue up at the top, and very, very slowly it transitions into nearly white. Snow is a little bit darker than white. So that's all there is to it. It's really easy, right? Um, One thing that you should note though is that there are some features in CSS that are pretty new, and so different web browsers use them a little bit differently. Some linear gradients or some gradient properties need to have what's called a vendor prefix. What that means is that, for instance, Chrome needs to have, for some features, a little thing put in front of it in order for it to work. And then sometimes Firefox or Safari needs to have something put in front of a property in order for it to work. So in this case, if I wanted it to work in Safari and sometimes in Chrome, what I need to do is I need to do dash WebKit dash and then the rest, linear gradient, cornflower blue snow. So if I were to get rid of the other one just temporarily and save it, you would see that it still works here because I've got this WebKit um, prefix, vendor prefix. It's not something you'll have to worry about very much. Everything I'm going to be showing you is going to work in Chrome by default. Um, but if you want to show this, for instance, to somebody on Mac using Safari, you're going to have to use that WebKit um, prefix. Now, what that means is that sometimes you'll have to have two lines. You'll have to have the regular line that is for, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, and then you'll have to have this dash WebKit line just for Safari. So there might, as I go along, I might tell you make sure that you add the WebKit vendor prefix, or what I might tell you to do is take a look at W3 Schools for gradients and take a look at what they tell you to do for Safari or when you need to apply a vendor prefix. So we can leave that in there now because it's not doing any harm. Right now I've got a nice gradient, but what I want, you'll notice how the blue starts turning immediately into white, and what I think I want is for it to be blue until it's right about down here. So what I can do is I can go back to my linear gradient um, line and say, actually, I want it to be cornflower blue until just about 80% of the way down. And if I save that and go back here, you'll see now it's cornflower blue all the way down until about here, and then it transitions to white, which is much more in keeping with what I want. This is kind of a common style. You'll see that a lot, where it's a solid color, and then once it gets down past the halfway point, somewhere like maybe 70 or 80%, then it starts to transition into a lighter color or a different color. So that will actually work the other way too. If you wanted to transition almost immediately, I could do cornflower blue at 10% and then come over here and refresh it, and it'll transition a little bit more quickly, I guess. See, if you just take out the default, it will do it the way it normally would, which is starting at cornflower blue at the top and then transitioning very slowly. The higher the percentage number you put in here, the less time it has to transition in here. See, it's the same color until right about here, and then it's got less time to transition. Another thing that you can do with linear gradients is you can actually add multiple colors. So let's say I want to add 4 colors. I want to do cornflower blue to purple to tomato and then to snow. So I just add commas, cornflower blue, comma purple, comma tomato, comma snow. And then I go over here and save it and refresh, and you'll see here's my blue to purple to tomato and then eventually into white. And once again, I can specify percentages here. I can say I want to be cornflower blue for the first 20%, and then I want it to be purple until 80%, and then tomato to change there at 90%, and then snow would be the last one. And you'll see how that'll change, right? So you can have as many colors in here as you want. Just know that the more colors you have, the more dramatic the changes will be. So I'm going to go back to just cornflower blue and snow, and I'll set it back to being at 70%. Okay, so another thing you can do, you've noticed that right now the gradient is going just from top to bottom. I think sometimes you might want it to move from left to right or have it move diagonally. What you do in that case is you say linear gradient, and before you specify the colors, you need to say to right. And what that'll do is it's telling it to move from left to right. See, from left to right rather than from top to bottom. If I get rid of the percentage there, it becomes a bit more obvious. From left to right. Now this is a case where Safari does it kind of differently. It's got a bit of a different syntax. So rather than first let's put in the vendor prefix webkit dash, and rather than saying to right, it actually wants you to use the word left. I guess it's going from left to right. So if you're designing for Macs, make sure that you throw that one in there. I'm going to get rid of it because we don't really need it. If you want it to go diagonally from the top to the bottom, you would put in, rather than it being to right, you would do to bottom right. And you'll notice that now it's kind of going diagonally from cornflower blue to white. And of course, if I wanted it to go the other way, I could do to bottom left. And now it's going from here to there. So that's pretty easy, right? Now, you should also know that you can actually make you don't have to just do a linear gradient. You can actually do what's called a radial gradient. So it starts out with one color at the center and kind of radiates out like in a circle or an oval type pattern. So what you do instead of doing linear gradient is you do radial. Radial gradient. And I'm going to get rid of all of this. I'll just say, once again, I want cornflower blue to snow. And you'll notice it's a circle here, and it kind of radiates out in every direction. So sometimes that might be a style that you want to apply. For now, I'm just going to leave it as linear. So what is this good for? I mentioned earlier that you can actually put it on buttons to make it appear a little bit more 3D. And I'll show you how I do that really quickly. So let's go down to my A, right? If I give it a so I've got this background color here. I need to get rid of background color because I'm going to use a gradient instead. Just do background and then linear gradient. And I'm going to go from white to light gray. And I'll save my change. Now take a look at the button the way it looks right now. I'll zoom in on it so it's a bit easier to see. It's fairly flat looking here, right? It just looks like a rectangle. But after I've put this linear gradient in, if I refresh it, oops, I make a mistake, and then you can't see it at all. I forgot, can't put a space in there. Okay. So let me take this away and do background color snow. So that's the way it looks without the gradient. And then notice the way it looks with the gradient. A little bit more 3D, right? It's because you've got it going light from the top to darker this way, so it kind of looks like it's getting lit from the top a little bit, which gives it kind of the appearance of a little bit of depth. And if you let's see, if you make an active selector on the A, what you can do is you can also give that a background linear gradient and flip them light gray, white. And what you'll see is, let me refresh it. When I click on this, it looks like I've toggled it, like it's pushed in because I've flipped the colors. So you can totally tell that you're clicking on it, which is useful for the user sometimes. It's hard to tell when you click on a link. Did I actually click on it? Is it doing anything? But if when I click on this, it looks like it's being depressed, then they get that feedback. So those are some of the ways that you can use gradients. Other than just adding visual style, it can be totally useful in certain cases. And you'll notice if you look around the web that a lot of people especially style their buttons like this because it makes them pop a little more. And you'll see a lot of people use gradients in a container div to kind of give the div a little bit of additional style. So give it a try. Try applying gradients to your backgrounds or to your buttons and see how you do. Thanks, guys.